The next component in NASA's network of vital communication satellites will be placed into space this month to continue the task of relaying data and commands from Earth to the space agency's fleet of spacecraft. 30 years into its operations, the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System has allowed NASA to expand its abilities to communicate directly with spacecraft like the International Space Station and observatories such as the Hubble Space Telescope, while being able to forego its network of ground-based communication stations around the world.
The TDRS constellation brings back all of the data and video that we see every day from the International Space Station. In addition, TDRS supports all of the data from the Hubble Space Telescope and all of our low Earth orbit NASA science missions.
In other words, TDRS accomplished exactly what NASA designed it for. Its work is far from finished, however, and NASA's needs are not shrinking. That's why the agency is launching TDRS-L, the next member of the third generation of TDRS satellites.
TDRS-L will sustain the constellation and it will add to this national capability.
Like its predecessors, TDRS-L carries the iconic look of two large parabolic antennas and a set of solar panels. Those antennas, each 15 feet in diameter, provided a bit of a challenge, since there is a limited amount of time they can stay folded and still unfurl to their proper shape. The processing teams kept close track of the time they were folded and had plans ready in case the antennas had to be opened if there was a lengthy launch delay. Identical to TDRS-K, which was launched in 2013, TDRS-L will take its station in geosynchronous orbit more than 22,300 miles above Earth. From there, it can basically hover over a point on Earth and communicate with every satellite and spacecraft below it, along with NASA's ground stations and other TDRS satellites. Working in conjunction with the 7 other operational TDRS platforms already in space, TDRS-L lets NASA stay in touch with its Earth-circling spacecraft at all times. In fact, TDRS spacecraft already in operation will help track this newest member of the family as it climbs from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida to its new home in space aboard an Atlas V rocket.
If you only had antennas in Africa, the middle of the Indian Ocean, and Australia, you generally are faced with certain coverage gaps. But looking down from the geostationary orbit of the TDRS constellation, you're able to seamlessly cover the entire period of a launch vehicle trajectory.
The United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket that will power the 7,600-pound TDRS-L off the launch pad to its orbit location arrived at Cape Canaveral in October to begin a couple of months of processing.
Luckily, TDRS-L has been a very smooth flow. TDRS-K, which also was a smooth flow, but it was kind of the first time we had launched in about 10 years, a TDRS satellite. And it was now launching on a new vehicle that launched on a former Atlas. Now it's launching on an Atlas V. So we were able to apply a lot of the lessons learned that we went through the TDRS-K flow into TDRS-L.
The Atlas V, which includes the venerable Centaur upper stage, is relatively new to NASA's launch catalog, but has taken on the mantle of NASA's workhorse booster. In recent years, it sent probes to Jupiter, Mars, and the Moon.
Although it's reliable and has been very successful, we don't change the way we go into a launch campaign or into a mission. We have very strict requirements. So although we know it's very reliable and very successful, we don't diminish our involvement in any way, shape, or form. We're always give it the same level of rigor that we would do for any mission, whether it was the first or the 50th.
While the Atlas V is a newer booster, the Centaur is celebrating its 50th year in service. Developed at NASA's Glenn Research Center in Ohio, the Centaur was the first to use liquid hydrogen for fuel in a mix with liquid oxygen. Its success paved the way for later hydrogen-fueled engines, including those on the second and third stages of the Saturn V rocket and the Space Shuttle main engines. Launch day is January 23rd for the TDRS-L. For the launch team and those who build and process the spacecraft, it will be a testing time, which is normal for every launch day, no matter the mission.
So the last, 4 minutes when you're going to terminal count, it's just one after another. You don't have a whole lot of time. You don't have time to stop and start doing things, and troubleshooting. It's very intense.
I've been tremendously lucky to have a highly capable team. The United Launch Alliance and the Launch Services Program team is just exemplary. I couldn't ask for anything better. And in that regard, I like to make sure that the team as a whole is focused on launch day, that we're ready for the countdown, that we've done all the steps necessary leading up to launch day that will ensure a flawless execution and mission success.
minus 1 minute. Rock, report range status.
Range green.
Minus 40.
Stable at step 3.
Minus 30. Status check.
Go Atlas. Go Centaur.
Go Tetris. Minus 20.
T-minus 15 seconds now, going into terminal count. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Main engine ignition and liftoff of the Atlas V with TDRS-L, building our ability to meet the growing future of communications in space.
Booster view has gone to closed loop control. Control roll program has begun. Vehicle body rates look good. Plus the battery voltages are stable, tank pressures are as well. Booster engine continues to look very good. Pump speeds and injector pressures are within band. Roll program is complete. Vehicle body rates controlling right down the middle. Booster engine performance continues to look very good. Tank pressures are stable.
Vehicle going through the sound barrier at this time.
Mach 1. Max Q. Vehicle body rates continue to look very good, controlling right down the middle. Coming up on booster throttle back, and we have throttle back right on schedule. Engine response looks good. Booster engine performance continues to look very good. And the booster has begun Q alpha limited steering as well as a small roll bias for telemetry. Body rates look good. And the liquid pyro valve for the RCS has fired, and now the pneumatic. That system is now pressurizing to flight levels. Signatures look good. Current altitude is 32.6 miles, downrange distance 57 miles, current velocity is 5,325 miles per hour. And the Q alpha limited steering phase of flight has completed. Body rates continue to look very good. Tank pressures are stable. Booster engine continues to operate well for the set mixture ratio. Pump speeds and injector pressures within expected range. And the booster has begun to throttle to maintain 5 Gs in preparation for BECO. Boost phase cooldown is underway. Signatures look good. And we've begun to throttle back to 4.6 Gs for BECO. Boost space cooldown is complete. And we have engine shutdown. BECO looks good, clean signature. We have retros and stage separation. Looks like a clean set. We have LOX and fuel pre-start. GN2 purge firing on the RCS is underway. We have ignition and full thrust on the RL-10. Looking for the payload fairing jettison momentarily, and we have indication of payload fairing jet. Looks like a good separation. And Centaur PU is being commanded to a LOX-rich mixture ratio for the early portion of this 834-second burn. Engine response looks good for the set mixture ratio. Closed loop steering has been enabled on Centaur. Vehicle is nulling out rates associated with the start transient. LO2 tank pressures have been ramped down and are stable. Current altitude is 113 miles. Downrange distance is 400 miles. Current velocity is 11,298 miles per hour. And we've begun seeing the thermal conditioning firings on the RCS. Signatures look good. Centaur body rates are now controlling right down the middle. The range track shows the vehicle making good progress right down the middle of the range. Range track continues to show good progress right down the middle of the corridor. Current altitude is 169 miles. Downrange distance 1,904 miles. Current velocity 15,509 miles per hour. And we have MECO 1. Engine shutdown looks good. We have 4S settling motors on. Fuel tank pressures are being vented as expected. FTS has been secured. Centaur has begun its turn to the PTC attitude. It's also begun to spin up to the 1.8 degrees per second expected during the PTC. And Centaur has achieved 1.8 degrees per second in its roll as it continues to reorient to its PTC attitude. Tank pressures are stable. Storage bottle pressures are as well. Bus and battery voltages look good as we continue to settle with 4S settling motors. This coast is expected to last just over 82 minutes in duration. It'll be followed by a second burn of 1 minute and 1 second duration, followed by a short coast of 286 seconds till spacecraft set. Dual branch pressurization is underway. We have fuel pre-start. And we're seeing the first oxidizer flow control cycling with LOX pre-start. We have center ignition and full thrust on the RL-10. Chamber pressure looks good. Fuel vent and LOX pump discharge are within band. Centaur PU is requesting a slight oxidizer-rich condition. Our All-10 performance continues to look very good. Currently accelerating at 1.47 Gs. And we have MECO. Engine shutdown looks good. We have 4S settling motors on. Centaur has begun to reorient to spacecraft separation attitude. Fuel tank pressures have been vented down. They are stable currently. Centaur has begun 50% 4S settling. Prior to spacecraft separation, Centaur will spin the spacecraft up to 30 degrees per second to stabilize the spacecraft for separation. And Centaur has achieved separation attitude. Fuel tank pressures have been vented down and are stable. Quick check of the MECO orbit shows eccentricity is 4 balls 1, inclination minus 3 balls 4-2. Semi-major axis has a delta of 0.75 nautical miles. Those were all deltas from the nominal. Centaur has now begun the spin up in preparation for spacecraft SIP. Five degrees per second. Ten degrees per second. $15 degrees per second. 20 degrees per second. Twenty-five degrees per second. $30 degrees per second, and we have spacecraft separation.